but I'm going to be pretty quiet. So you all probably just got that note. Before anybody asks, the meeting is being recorded. So that'll be posted onto the webinars section of our website. You'll be able to access it there. You'll be able to share it with anybody else. So if you've got to jump early, you will be able to access the recording and see the rest of the meeting. I'm thrilled to see such a large group, and I'm sure a couple of other folks are going to join us as the meeting gets going. But I'm just really excited about what can come out of this session. So thank you guys for joining us today to talk about all things, anything and everything composting. Before getting into that, which is really the meat of the session and what you're here for, I do just want to give a quick organizational plug for anyone who isn't terribly familiar with Sustainable CT. We run a municipal certification program that promotes and supports towns and communities in taking action on wide-ranging sustainability initiatives. We also administer on top of that or out of that program an innovative grant program, the Community Match Fund, that helps fund the initiatives and those projects that communities undertake through our municipal certification program. I'll give more info on the funding a bit later because that's very relevant to some of the discussion that we're going to have today about composting and the programs that you might be able to do. Getting into that, we've organized this webinar because a lot of what we see when we're out talking with folks about food waste and composting is that basically everyone understands the problem and wants to do something about it. So we're not going to spend any of the session today talking about, the solid waste crisis, what's going on, why this is something that you need to do. I think we're all here because we recognize the issue and want to do something about it. But what we constantly hear is that folks, they're just not quite sure where to start, how to go about getting one of these programs off the ground and taking the really practical steps to move from there's an issue, we need to address it, to moving on to let's actually do that thing. So with that in mind, what we have planned are some extremely practical presentations by towns, groups, businesses, and individuals who have actually successfully implemented a variety of different solutions, all of which address food waste in different ways. So our speakers will cover community composting, in-vessel composting, school composting, and food scraps recovery programs, highlighting 4 different but equally successful models. So just different ways to address the problem, but all of them reaching that goal. And basically what we want to get out at the end of this session is that you guys will essentially have all of the info that you need to go out and start the process of implementing one of these programs in your own community. So sort of taking things from theory and the ideas into saying, hey, here's how you start one of these programs. Here's what it looks like, what it's running, and here's how you do it. That's our goal. Info is really good, but money is also often an issue. And sometimes, maybe all the time, it's the only issue. So going back to our funding program that I mentioned before, the Community Match Fund, we have dedicated funding from the Hampshire Foundation to help communities implement composting and food waste diversion programs, exactly like the ones that you're going to hear about today, but it's broader than that and could also cover different initiatives, different programs that you might want to look at. So for any eligible projects, Sustainable CT can provide dollar for dollar matching funds up to $7,500, which in many cases, that's 50% of the full cost of the program. So we can really help move the needle on these and help you guys implement these projects where money is the issue. So while we're going to give you tons of great info today, we've also got dollars on the table to help you take that info and actually put it to use. This is getting ahead of things, but for anybody who already has a project in mind, or if today's conversation and presentations spur an idea or spur you to say, hey, let's take that next step and do a project, just send us an email at funding@sustainablecT.org. I'll actually, Lynn, if you can send that in the chat too. I won't type and have us sit in awkward silence while we're doing that. So last thing before getting on to the speakers, who are really who you're here for today, just some quick sort of Zoom or process housekeeping. So please hold all of your questions until after all 4 speakers have finished their presentations. We've got somewhere between 30 to 45 minutes set aside at the end of this for Q&A and just an open discussion that's meant to be free flowing. So there'll be plenty of time to ask and answer questions, but please just hold them until everybody has spoken. We want to be mindful of time and make sure that we hold to the hour and a half that we promised everybody. If you're worried about forgetting something like that, you have a question that you really want to ask, you can post it in the chat and then we'll address it later on during the Q&A. Okay, on to the people who you're actually here to hear from. First up, we have Domingo Medina. Domingo, I think you're here, of Peels and Wheels Composting. So go ahead, unmute yourself. I'll let you take it from here.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to share with you some slides that I think it will be much more illustrative of what you want to hear, but I don't have, and you need to allow me to share my screen. There you go.
Yeah, I made you a co-host a minute ago.
Okay, got it. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay. So listen, well, thank you for having me. I just want to say that I have not received funding from Sustainable CT, and that's important because there are different approaches of how to fund some of the projects here, and there are a great variety of opportunities. I started Peels and Wheels Composting, which is a business in New Haven, which is a pickup and compost processing business, and it's in the urban setting where I'm at. I've been running this now for almost 7 years, and so far has been a very successful program. Basically, the way I justify what I do is thinking about not only the issue of mitigating environmental pollution, enriching soils, and creating jobs in New Haven, but also thinking about the end use. Right now, as you may know, we don't have landfills anymore. We are burning a lot of our organic through municipal incineration. Now we're taking things to an aerobic digester. I'm more concerned about having, high quality compost that can feed into healthy soils, into growing food, which is the main source, which farms and urban gardens and urban farms are the main source of food production. And I feel that a lot of those resources should go back to that main source. So my concept and model is a bit, so basically people pay for a service that allows us to pick up on a year-round basis and process compost on a year-round basis. I give compost back to people. I donate some compost and also sell some compost in the city. So here's the idea is, how can we capture a percentage of that organic waste that is going to the mainstream and it's getting burned or going to a digester, and keep it locally so it can generate the benefits in my own town. And this under the umbrella of community composting, and I always love to talk about this. By diverting food waste from municipal incineration and towards composting, we reduce the cost of waste and environmental pollution in New Haven, linked to human health, and we have a chance to create rich soil amendment for growing plants and food in our place while creating the local jobs. So that's our inspiration. The system that I use that is perfect for urban settings are in-vessel composting. I started with 3-bin system. Now I have a 12-bin system. Each bin has a 4x4x4 size. Therefore, it can fit up to 64 cubic feet of material. That's around 2.4 cubic yards of material. I have a rotation basis of 4 weeks. That means that, each, I fill up 3 bins each week. And by the end of the 4th week, the beans in the first weeks are ready to come out to get cured, and I start all over again. So I work with batches of 30 days and to be able to break down the organic matter through the recipe development that we have. This is a system that is linked to a solar array, to link to a battery to store the energy, that has an inverter to change the DC to AC voltage, to be able to run a blower on a timer. So we push air into the chamber to keep the mix aerobic in aerobic conditions, which allows for proper aerobic composting process happening. This system has the maximum capacity of 400 households. If you multiply that by the average of what people throw away on a weekly basis, that's like between 8 to 10 pounds. That's like 3,200 pounds that we manage on a weekly basis, without talking about the leaves and the wood chip that we add. And that's around 1.6 tons per week that we manage. And of course, then, we have these curing piles that takes up to 8 weeks. So between 12 to 16 weeks, we have already compost ready to sift and to distribute. This is just a view of what we work in less than less than a half an acre in space, very compressed. You can see the bins at the back there. We do a lot of our mixing on a parking lot in a private business that allows us to use a space where we do our recipe and our mixing. And also we have a trommel and a sifter that allows us to really move material very, very quickly. You can see there's an illustration of the PVC pipe system that feeds air into the system on a timer basis and allows us basically to do the mixture, put it in there, and then forget about it for the next 30 days. Of course, we monitor temperature. We look at moisture levels just to make sure that the conditions are proper for a nicely aerobic decomposition process. This is an estimate that I came up of numbers that I have just for 3-bin system. The cost of all the materials, including the lids, including the base, is $2,600. The solar system, including the batteries and the inverter and the blower, is around $1,000. And the aeration pipe system for the 3-bin system is $250. So it's around almost $4,000 for that. The good thing is that you can expand up to 12 bins, and and the cost for solar system is the same because you can feed a lot of boxes with the same system. The only thing you have to expand is the boxes and the aeration pipes. So we cover a huge area in New Haven that covers Fairhaven, downtown New Haven, Westville. We go up to Whitneyville and Hamden, and we all collect this by a system of bikes and trailers in a radius of up to 8 miles from the downtown area in Fairhaven, where we have a location. And this just illustrates that it's a very powerful model in the sense that it's in our urban setting. It's a low cost for entrance. We manage a significant amount of waste on a yearly basis. We're linked also to Common Ground High School, where they have a system that we help to develop. Also, Gather New Haven, we also help the system Light Mine in one of the gardens. So now we're able to distribute some of the food and organic waste that we collect to them. And of course, the end you can see is the idea is to provide this compost for urban farm, for urban garden, to people's backyard, to urban trees, to parks, and to be able to grow food. And that's one of the highlights of our day when we can distribute compost. And this is just an idea of what we have been able to divert from 2014 when we started, that for a small operation like us has a major impact. And I will believe the model that we have is something that can be replicated in different neighborhoods, different parts of town, and without the need of having large investments. So I'll stop here. Bye.
Thanks, Domingo. It's always so much fun to hear about the program, just like to understand the model and also to see the system. I'm constantly talking to people about the system and saying, hey, Domingo Medina, Peels and Wheels has this, but I never actually know how to describe it. So it's great to hear you actually talk through. I mean, some of that went over my head, but to understand what it is, what it looks like, just to give an idea of, look, this is what this is. It's a real thing. You can implement it. So thank you. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of questions, but we'll hold that until the end. Like I said, if you can just end the screen share, we will then pass it off to Dan Colellery and Jenny Henkin from the city of Stamford, who are going to talk about their in-vessel composting system.
Yeah, I think I stopped it. From my end, it says it stopped. So kind of strange.
All right, here I'm going to, weird. All right, I think that should have worked for everybody, right? Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Dan, I know you don't have slides or anything to share. Jenny, do you have slides you need to share?
Nope.
Perfect. Okay, take it away then.
Good morning, everybody. Hi, I'm Jenny Henkind, and I'm here with Dan. So we're from the city of Stamford, food scrap recycling program. Just to let you know, we're very different than the prior program that was talked about, and that was very impressive, by the way. Thank you so much. Very inspiring. So basically, we're the city of Stamford, now the second largest city in the state of Connecticut officially.
Wow.
I was inspired to start the program based on the Scarsdale, New York model, which some of you may or may not be familiar with. But basically, as I describe our program in brief, it's based on the Scarsdale model with one big exception, which is what Dan is going to talk about. But essentially, we are a public government and citizen combined program. We work with the city to get grants and fundraise. So we fundraise, and thank you, Abe, for the grants, because that's what started this whole thing, was the ability to get the grants from Sustainable CT, and grew from there. So we are a public government partnership, and it took us a good, I'm going to say, year and a half, especially with COVID, to get the program off the ground. Essentially, the way it works is we sell kits to our citizens, which are collection kits. I don't need to get to the details. They collect compost at home, and our composting program accepts anything from the earth. So if it's from the earth, you can put it in our composting program, bones, cheese, whatever it is. So people collect their scraps. They bring it down. Currently, we have at our recycling center one collection area. We have a collection area where we have larger buckets. People deposit their food scraps there, and then Dan will talk about our special machine that processes those materials into compost. Some of the biggest sort of issues that we've run into is, number one, geography, people complaining that it's a schlep to get down to the recycling center, and can we make it more accessible and convenient for them? That is an ongoing project. We're trying to figure out more sites for people. Smell is a complaint from people. So we try to encourage people to bring their compostables down a little more frequently if possible. We are trying to encourage people to do what we call compost carpooling, to try and get whole neighborhoods to get together, and then people can only have to bring compostables down, once a month if you can get 4 people together. And then if you're doing it more frequently, it's less odor, less of all that stuff, and it gets people to work together. We are working a lot on community outreach. So at local city events, we're setting up tables. We are trying to get into farmers markets. So outreach and education is a huge part of what we're doing. And then in terms of fundraising, Sustainable CT was our jumping off point, and we actually have second grant monies available when we want to pull the plug on that, which we appreciate, again, Abe. The other thing is, now that the program has shown so much success, and we outgrew our program within a month, the program was so successful that we are now applying for really large grants from the government. We just applied for a $50,000 grant, which I'm not sure when we're going to hear about it. But we're really aggressively trying to get money. And the city of Stamford, because of the popularity and uptake of the program, has also been incredibly generous with helping out in large part because of Dan. The reason that this program is working is because we have very dedicated leadership on the volunteer side, the citizen side, and incredible leadership from the city in Dan. If you don't have those two components, it's not going to happen. So please, if you're planning on doing a program like this, you must have a city champion like Dan, who will never take the credit that he deserves, but you have to have a city champion like Dan to help with the program. I'm trying to think what else. Because I'm a pediatrician, I'm telling you all, please get vaccinated. And part of all of this is you got to have fun with it. So we always have fun with our doodads. So I think that's the little wrap up I'm going to give. I'm going to throw it off to Dan, because what makes Stamford different from Scarsdale, just to let you guys know, and many programs are like this, a lot of city drop-off programs collect scraps and then pay companies to pick up those food scraps. They take them offsite to large centers, which then turn them into compost. And the municipalities have to purchase back compost from these places. So there's a double cost. One is the hauling cost, well, triple really, the cost of hauling it away, the cost of rebuying it, and the cost of emissions of transporting everything. So Dan, being the visionary that he is, has found a different way that the city of Stamford is doing. So Dan, take it away.
Thanks, Jen, for all those two kind things you said. Um, the we have a great task force. Jen is the head of that, and our volunteers are tremendous. And that's like Jen said, that's a key aspect of it. As you all probably know, there's only 3 certified compost facilities in the state of Connecticut. So our hauling cost and tip fee to get compost waste to those sites from Stamford is somewhere around $130, $140 a ton. I currently pay $75 a ton to dispose of garbage. That's why we've never done that, done a compost program. So what we did was I did some research. We found this company called Echo Rich, and they produce a machine that is currently used, I think 200 or 300 places within the country. New York City Parks Program uses it. And if you go on their website, again, Echo Rich, ECHORICH, they use it down there in New York. So I looked at that, saw them. We purchased a 100 pound per day machine that accepts 100 pounds of food waste per day. That, as Jen said, preaching to the converted, the people who love and participate in our program. And we've only sold 200 plus kits so far to the general public. We only accept food waste in compostable bags. So like Jen said, we're reaching out again now, trying to go out at the city concert program and food markets that we're going to gain even more people. So right now we're accepting, we're getting about 100 to 200 pounds dropped off per day. So what we did was we saw that our current machine, 100 pounds, was not big enough. So working with Echo Rich, excuse me, they accepted our machine back, which cost $24,500. They mostly paid for through our donations and Sustainable Connecticut grant. The city paid for the differential. So what they did was they took back our 100 pound machine and they gave us a 500 pound machine per day, only at an additional cost of $10,000. Usually that machine costs $50,000. So at the additional cost $10,000, they gave us the 500 pound machine. We just got that Monday. We're setting it up now. Hopefully that'll be available and ready for us to start disposing of our food waste in there by the end of the day tomorrow. And 500 pounds per day, I think will give us greater volume. As Jen had said, between our reaching out to the public program and the public the way it is right now, Stamford, at the far reaches of Stamford, it'll take you about a half hour to get from one corner of Stamford to our recycling center. So what we're trying to do is I'm trying to work with other locations in that far end of Stamford to accept the second machine. And if I can, either through grants or city funding or donations, whatever, we can get a second machine for up there, that'll help our program tremendously. So the goal is to divert as much food waste as possible for the environmental aspect, obviously for the economic aspect from the city cost as well. And what we found so far is that the machine, what it does is it processes within 24 hours food waste and turns it into a compostable item that then automatically discharges from the machine into your container. And you have to hold it within for 3 weeks. And then after 3 weeks, it's a viable compostable material that you can distribute to participants in the program. The item that has come out is pretty clean and looks like a viable compost alternative that then we can, I'll test when it comes out after 3 weeks, and we'll verify that that it meets all the requirements that it has to. But we think it's a great program. I anticipate that in the long run, we'll have a cost savings as well as the environmental savings from hauling stuff out of Stamford. And if I can get a second machine or a third machine, whatever, as many as we can. It'll be a great program here in the city, again, for environmental benefits as well as for cost benefits for saving the city budget in the long run as well. The kits that we sell, Jen was describing, are $20 per. That's the cost of those kits. Residents seem to love it. Again, we're preaching to the converted. Those are partaking in the program. So we're really looking to expand it and think we're in a good frame to go forward. It's kind of all I have.
Thanks, Dan. I see you got someone coming in. I know I promised no questions, but I actually have just maybe it's not a question, it's a prod, but could you just talk a little bit, basically, purely logistically, right? Purely practically, what it actually takes to get the program set up at your recycling center, what staff looks like to manage it, right? Like how much time this entails, when folks can drop off?
Right. Okay. So my recycling center is currently open Tuesday through Saturday, 7 to 2. And, we accept recycling, yard waste, bulky waste, motor oil, cooking oil. We have swap shops there for general goods as well as a book swap shop. So my recycling center is staffed already. We originally thought we would accept the food waste in compostable bags in toters based on the machine and the ability to put it into the machine. What we did was only my staff can put it in the machine. They put it in at the end of their shift at the end of the day. So we are taking the food waste and residents are putting it into, in essence, Home Depot buckets with lids on them. We currently have about 15 buckets. 20 were purchased. 3 to 5 disappeared within the first day because anything not locked down at the recycling center seems to disappear. But so there it is. My staff kind of oversees residents putting it in. Again, preaching to the converted. The people who partake in the program love the program and are really conscientious about what they put in. I've installed signs there, the items that are accepted. So it takes my staff about 15, 20 minutes at the end of the day to put the items into the machine, and then the machine runs by itself. So I had to install a machine. We had to install power to the machine, and that's really it. Then the machine runs for 24 hours. And after enough waste is in the machine of it running, you can process by this machine 500 pounds per day. After there's a quantity, it'll discharge automatically out of the machine, and we'll put that. I've installed a tent with a concrete foundation that we're going to put the compostable waste in that we'll be able to turn with, and after again 3 weeks, it'll be a viable compost item that we can give to the public.
Awesome. Thanks for explaining that. I did not know that the machine automatically discharges. So that's really cool to know that that's one thing that's just.
Yeah, the new machine, 500 machine does that. The old machine, even, you have to be there, but it's a slow process, but it discharges automatically.
Okay, very cool. Thank you, Dan, Jenny.
And we invite anybody to come down and take a look at it. Call me, set up something with me, and you'll be more than welcome to come down, take a look at the machine, see our program. Listen, if there's ways to make it better, we're always accepting new ideas. So, communication is a great thing.
Dan, thanks for the offer. You better believe I'm very generous with all of your time for for putting folks in touch with you guys. But really, thank you for making yourselves available. It's a great program, and I know it's new, so it's great for people to be able to see it. Again, Dan, Jenny, thank you guys both for that great presentation. Next up, we have a bit of a different model. It's a little bit more old school, traditional composting. Alex Moak from the town of Greenwich is going to talk about the school composting programs that she's helped to implement in town. Alex, I'll let you take it away. I think I made you a co-host too.
Good morning. My name is Alexandra Mark. I work for the Conservation Commission in town of Greenwich, and actually I live in Stamford, so I'm very proud of what's going on there. And also I am a proud member of the Waste Free Greenwich. So I will just tell you the story and walk you through the process, how this all started, because this was not really in the very beginning focusing on composting. Composting was the byproduct of the Leaf Nature's Treasures program, which was endorsed by the Board of Selectmen, and it was created to address leaf pickup from the roads. This is what Greenwich does in portion of Greenwich, and those leaves on the roads not only expensive to dispose of, but also are creating all sorts of problems. And we started teaching people how to mulch mow, and that was exciting and actually going well. And we started receiving a lot of phone calls saying, hey, look, I have a small yard and I have huge trees. I have so many leaves. I can't really incorporate them into the lawn because the lawn is choking. So we discovered that a composting program has to be part of it. And then we thought, well, where to start better rather than at schools. So schools were chosen, and originally we thought we will just take them as the grants for demonstration programs, but then we thought, why not composting at schools? So that's how the idea started. And so in summer 2015, we approached 2 schools and we decided that we're going to do a pilot program. When it did not have any money because Ebb wasn't hired yet. So we had to figure this out. So basically we reached out to 2 lumber yards, and each of them gave us free material for 1 composter. That year experienced and actually ready to go, we welcomed the Connecticut DEP grant, which was actually for recycling. And it took us a little bit to convince them that composting is also recycling. So in the end, they liked the program and they awarded us $20,000. So that was actually a huge thing for us. And we were able to produce 11 composters and engage 11 schools. One of them was private, 10 public schools. And also we purchased 250 backyard bins, and we trained 250 property owners with this program. In 2002, we have 2 additional schools which wanted to join our program, and that's how we reached to Sustainable Connecticut, Match Fund, and were founded for those 2 bins. We haven't been able to build them because of COVID, but I'm going to be sharing the experience we have with the other bins. And June 2020, we started our food scrap program, and we also based our model on Scottsdale. You know very well why composting is important at schools. We believe that with climate change and all the crises we're experiencing, it's really important to raise responsible generation and teach and establish good behaviors and habits into schools and students, and also divert as much waste as possible and save money. We did some study in several schools, and they all demonstrated that if you have well-established recycling program, you take your liquids out of your waste stream and compost, you're able to easily divert 50% of your wastes. So step by step, how this was put together and run. So I will recommend approaching Board of Education. I actually skipped them. I didn't go to them. I know this is a big no-no, but I just didn't feel that they're going to embrace the project, and I just felt that they will kill the project. So I went directly to the school principals. I work very closely with PTA because I needed them as our volunteers and our supporters. So that's how we started. And actually we were discovered by a Board of Education after we planted the 10th composter. And then they actually give us a post activity approval and blessing, which was easier, I believe, if we would approach them in the beginning. The next step was to construct and install composters. And this was done by Parks and Recreation, our marine division. They have their own shop and they're very creative, and I will show you some details of it. Training students. So this was mainly done in 2 ways. One was a PowerPoint presentation was created, and some schools prefer this better. So we basically send them the PowerPoint presentation, and one day they designated that all teachers at the same time will give the presentation to all the students, so the whole school will be educated and trained. The other way to do this, we took 5 or 10 minutes of a lunch break, and we went to cafeteria, and at every single shift that day, we have this 10 minutes training where we talk about compost, what this is all about, why it's important, and also what is expected from the students. And we taught them that all we need the raw fruits and vegetables. We did not collect the cooked food because this will attract rodents. So we wanted to make sure that this is not going to be the case and we don't fail. So just fruits and vegetables. And actually we discovered that there's not that much in our lunch menu of fruits and vegetables. We did get some contamination. Students were throwing cooked food and they were trying forks and wrappers, but this is not a problem because once the compost develops, you basically sieve the compost and you recover all the impurities such as plastic and wrappers. And then if you just end up with some cooked food, that's not a big deal. It's going to be decomposing together with other items. Next step, establish maintenance protocol. And this sometimes was a big challenge in some schools. It was easy in others. And I will talk a little bit more about it. Annual cleaning. So basically, after the school year was over, I will go and manage the compost over the summertime. I will keep turning it. If we have dry summer and the decomposition was not going at the rate I would like to, I will go to Starbucks, get a few buckets of coffee grounds, and I will just throw it there. Coffee grounds is an expediter of decomposition. So that was helpful. If the compost did not fully develop, that was fine too. We could remove it and incorporate it to the soil. Even not unfinished compost will improve the soil and benefit the soil. It can just finish the composition process in the soil, that's fine. Then as soon as we have leaves every fall, we will replenish the composters. So here's the cafeteria setting, and this is a standard setting. We have 4 bins. One is for liquid, one is for compost, one is for garbage, and one is for recycling. So the compost was taken out daily, and different schools had different people who are responsible for it. Sometimes in some schools we have science teacher, in some other schools, usually elementary school, if we had to choose students, we will focus on 2nd graders because they have soil unit. And then to thank them, we will organize some sorts of training or class, some sorts of fun activities with vermicompost and worms to make them excited and thank them for their engagement. Also, the cafeteria staff sometimes was helpful, and not very often, but from time to time we could count on custodians. With custodians was a challenge because they are unionized in Greenwich, and they said, no, this is not in my job description. And because, as I said in the beginning, I didn't go to the Board of Education, they employed directly by the Board of Education. I didn't really have any power over them. So that was kind of challenging. And actually one program did not work at all because custodians said no, and there was no really cooperation with any other staff members. As I mentioned, the bins were only collecting raw fruits and vegetables, no preserved, no cooked food. Preserved food is actually going against the decomposition, but if you have just some of it, it's not going to be a big problem. And we did weigh the amount of compost collected, and as you can see, Eastern Middle School, which has around 400 students, we collected 70 pounds daily, around that number. So here's our outdoor composter. The dimension is basically we have 18 length and depth 6 and 5 high. Why these dimensions? Because we were planning that we're going to be using a bobcat to remove the compost from each bay. And also, if we need to turn the compost, we're also going to be using machines if needed. So basically, the front of the Composter that are removables. Those boards are actually slidden in, so you can take them out and open up every single one of them, and just clean them with the Bobcat. So we're using the pressure treated wood because it was less expensive, vice versa cedar. In the beginning, when we got the grant, we just wanted to engage as many schools as possible rather than really worry about the quality that much. You need, in order to compost, you need a source of nitrogen and source of carbon. So as you can see, those 3 compartments, they have different things in them. So this is our active bay. So it means that every day we will bring raw fruits and vegetables from the cafeteria, dump them there, pick the leaves, which are stored into other compartments, and cover the food with leaves. This does 2 things. One thing is to keep the rodents away and the food not exposed directly, and then also creates layers. So you're basically layering the nitrogen source, which is the food scraps, and then you put the carbon source, which are leaves, and they're all working together to get the compost done. This way you don't have to churn the compost very often. Here are some tips for the design, and which we discovered that really worked well for us. So the overall cost, our composter cost for 3-bay composter was $1,200, but that was a few years ago, and now the construction material is up, and probably you may not be able to afford a composter for $1,200. However, the prices varies, and I think our area is very expensive, and probably if we go anywhere else in Connecticut, the lumber is still less than in Greenwich. So I just put this range, and it all depends what type of material you're using, whether or not this is a pressure treated wood or cedar. Cedar is way more expensive. And then what we discovered, you don't really have to have 3 bays. 2 bays are really adequate. You just have to have one, your active bin, and the second one, which stores the leaves. It is better to have 3 because then you have enough leaves just in case, or you have more of them if you need them. So it's, or if the active bin is full, then you can move to the next one and work on the next one and let the first one go through the process of compost making. So if you don't have any money, those pellets works really well. You just have to figure out how to create the front and then the top. But if you just keep them open, it's not a big deal. We were doing a lot of rodent proofing of the bins, but we discovered that it's not really needed because we haven't had any problems with rodents. They were there, but most of them are nocturnal, so you don't see them. You don't see wildlife jumping into your bins during the day because there are too many activities around them also. In general, I don't see this as a problem. So anyway, you can see that we created a groove here. So this is basically a board attached to 4x4, and here's another board, flat board, attached to 4x4, which creates this groove. And then we also have those bars, which create space. This is for aeration. So like the airflow improved to the composters. We wanted to make sure that they're not going to ever stink, and they actually haven't. So that's a good thing. And also this saves you money because you don't need that many boards. So again, you can see the groove here, and then you can open up this whole compartment, or you can close it up if you need it. And then you can see the top, it has chicken wire, and the chicken wire helps you to keep the inside moist, because moisture and air is very important in composting process. So it's basically an open system. And then you can see the groove again here. And you can see the chicken wire in the back. So the first composters had all the outside walls chicken wired. The top was chicken wired. And then if you would like your front to be also rodent proof, we had those little bars. You don't put those bars, you don't create the spacing between the boards. You just let them slit and touch each other, and you have to close your system for the night, and you'll be safe. Also, you can put chicken wire underneath if you really worry about rodents. But again, I haven't found this as a problem. This bin is actually open at the bottom, so there's a good contact with all the white life in the soil, which you need for the composting process. And then one more thing, this is the 4x4. The 4x4 goes actually 2 feet into the soil. We created them longer, so this was our anchorage, so we don't have to use cement or anything else, and we just will dig out the hole and install the 2x4 deeper. So this will just keep the composter in place. In terms of location, you're supposed to find something which is convenient. If students are going to be carrying the compost, it has to be close to the school. They, especially during the winter time and when it's raining, they don't want to walk too far, and usually they have very short lunch breaks, so they shouldn't be wasting time. You have to make sure that it's accessible for them, so that's why those boards are removable, because you can lower them really low. So for your elementary school students, you have enough space, and for them it's easy to just pour the stuff in. And we never open the top because it's heavy, and students usually won't be able to reach, only the high school ones, but not the shorter students. And this is only for cleaning. So those, the way that you can open it up in the front is really important. The compost is supposed to be far away from the building. You have to, they don't smell, but just in case you have a really heavy rain, and when compost is really wet, that's what may cause smell. And also, if you just make this very airtight and you don't turn the compost, you might also have some issues. So just to be safe, take it away from the building, not very close. In partial shade, because full sun exposure would dry the compost out, and the process will slow down because you will kill some of the bacteria. Bacteria needs moisture to reproduce and thrive. Far away from trees, we have one composter which is in the wooded setting, and we have so much root system that we can't get this compost out because it's all root bounded. Well drained area, obviously, again, because you don't want the compost to be wet, and put it on the soil, not an asphalt, because you need the beneficial bugs coming from the soil and helping you to process your compost. So just quickly going through the process, and that was done when still aerobic was there. Now we have patronicity. I think I pronounced this well, all right. So the process is as such. So you basically write a short paragraph to describe your project. You send it to APE or anybody else at Sustainable Connecticut. Once you approved, you then create a page. We created a page with aerobic. It was a little bit challenging. It all depends what your computer skills are, but obviously very rewarding. Our goal was to raise slightly over 3,000 because of the match 1-to-1. We had only raised half of it. So it took us a month to reach the goal. Actually, we exceeded the goal, and we were using a lot of social media. We were talking to PTA and to parents at schools, and we had a couple of press releases when we were raising the money. So working with Sustainable Connecticut is great, and we really enjoyed it. And I think Connecticut is very fortunate that we have such an option, because as we all know, grants are difficult to apply for. It's a torturous process. There's no guarantee that you're going to get the money after this all hard work. And also on the top of it, that are not happening very often. Sustainable Connecticut is always here for us, and it's so helpful. And I would like to just express my gratitude to Abe and tell him that we're really going to miss him. Okay. If you have any questions, I guess later. So I will just stop sharing. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, I was going to say questions will have to hold till the end, so we can put that slide on hold for now. Thank you for this super detailed description of the entire program, right? Both how you got it started, how it's actually run in the school for collecting the food, and then what the composters in the system actually looks like. I mean, talking about a practical presentation that gives you all the tools to actually go out and implement the thing, I don't think it could be any more practical than that. So thank you. That was awesome. It's great to just see what it is and actually understand it. All right, I'm going to move right along though. We can get to questions about that later on. Next up, we have Robin Bates Mason from the town of New Canaan and Planet New Canaan, who was instrumental in implementing the town's food scraps recovery program. So this is going to be the fourth model of composting and food waste diversion that we'll hear about today. Robin, I'll let you take it away.
Hi, great. Thank you. I'm Robin. I'm with a nonprofit organization in New Canaan called Planet New Canaan, and we helped set up food scrap program, which might be a little smaller than the other town recently been talking about, but you can see my screen. Sorry, Abe, can you see my screen?
We can now. Yeah, there's a little pause there, probably Wi-Fi connections, but we can see it.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to give a short presentation on how we started our food scrap program in New Canaan. The first thing we did is about 3 or 4 years ago, we presented a movie called Wasted. We presented it with our nature center and with our library. We had over 120 people at one viewing. And that was how we got the conversation started in our town about the food scrap program. We had such good feedback from this movie about starting up a program that we reached out to our Department of Public Works and our Conservation Commission. And as someone said, you need a champion. Definitely, Tiger Man, who's the director of our Department of Public Works, as well as Chris Shipper, who's the chair of our Conservation Commission, were completely on board. So next, what we did is we reached out to other towns, and we were lucky enough that Darien, a town next to us, had already implemented it. So I reached out to Carolyn Bain, who's on their recycling advisory committee, and she gave us a tour of what they were doing. She also told us, and as other people have said, to reach out to Scarsdale, New York, and we took a tour of their facility just to see what they were doing and if that could work in New Canaan. And I think that's something important, is that, how one town does it may not work for every town, but it's great to learn from each other. The next, what we did is the fundraising, which was just discussed through the Sustainable Connecticut Community Match. And how we did that is we reached out, we had to get the word out. We contacted local newspapers, we presented to local organizations such as New Canaan Garden Club, the New Canaan Rotary Club. We had Nick from Curbside Compost, who picks up our food scraps, present with us as well. And that was great because he could really give details about how the program worked on his end. And then we also promoted the fundraiser on social media heavily. Our fundraising goal was $4,000 with a $4,000 match from Sustainable Connecticut for the pilot year. And we met that within 5 days. People are so interested in this that we when the fundraising was over, we had people still wanting to give us money. We didn't need it. So that's our setup at our New Canaan transfer station of our food scrap program. We do work with Curbside Compost to pick up the food scraps once a week. Currently, right now in the summer, it's being picked up twice a week because of the heat. But we're averaging, I think the highest we had recently was about 1,200 pounds of food scraps a week, which is pretty good for a town our size. We are limited right now by space, but Department of Public Works is working on that, and I'm sure they'll be changed in the future. Our food waste is taken to an industrial composter, New Milford Farms, and that's important because in our situation, where your food scraps go depends on what you can put in there. So the picture up there on the top, many towns use the food scrap kit, which is very successful. And this actually is a food scrap kit from Darien. And I'm sure most towns that have implemented have the same food scrap. It's just for multiple reasons. It wasn't right at this time for New Canaan to sell us a kit. So what we did is we reached out to local retailers to carry products to support the program. Our local hardware store, Weed and Duryea, and our local grocer, Walter Stewart's Market. After we spoke to them, they began carrying compost bins and compost bags in various sizes to help support the program. Weed and Duryea has actually greatly increased their inventory of compost bins and bags. So actually the white compost bin up top, they're selling now as well as a couple other compost bins. And now they're selling the BPI certified compostable bags in various sizes. So for us, that's been helpful because it's reciprocal. Like they're helping us with the program, but of course we're helping a local stores. Another thing we are doing is, one thing that's great about the towns that do sell the kits is they have information in the kits. So we're now working with Weed and Duryea and Walter Stewart's Market to have brochures about the what is allowed in the food scrap program and how it works there for people to pick up. We're also lucky that Walter Stewart's decided to switch over to BPI certified compostable produce bags to help support the food scrap program. One of our members was presenting to an organization where a staff member of Stewart's said one of the issues we had was people putting produce bags in, not realizing they weren't allowed. And they took it upon themselves saying, well, we're going to switch completely over to BPI certified compostable bags to promote the program. So that's been a big help for us. The one thing that we found with the food scrap program, and I'm sure everyone does, is continuous education. As you can see on the left, that is the front of an insert that the Conservation Commission printed up to go into the Canaan tax bill. I believe Greenwich did the same, but it has information about the food scrap program, and it's great because it goes to everyone in town, every household. Per our conversations with Scarsdale, one of the things they told us with the food scrap program is make sure to have an email where people can reach out with questions. And even this morning, I've received 2 questions about the food scrap program and what is allowed. So they were make sure it's an email that someone's constantly checking so those answers can be questions. Those questions can be answered. Another is that Planet New Canaan, we're in touch with our local town greeters, and we've printed out these inserts ourselves, and we're giving them to them for anyone who's new can see it. And as well, we're constantly on social media, and we'll put in the papers, like, you have questions about food scraps, contact us. So that's big. So education is big because I do look in the bin sometimes and I see things that aren't supposed to be in there. So education needs to be continuous. And that's it. I mean, we're at planetnewcanaan@gmail.com. And if anyone has any questions how we started it, but also if you need to contact Scarsdale or I don't want to throw Carolyn Bain under the bus. I ask her questions all the time. We're happy to share any information and contacts, and please just contact us. And that's it.
Awesome. Thanks, Robin. Short, sweet, but thorough. Okay, so guys, those are the presentations, right? That was our goal today, was to present on those 4 different programs, give you an overview of what they look like, how they get implemented, how you run them. And we've stuck pretty close to time, not to be self-congratulatory, but so we've got another half hour just for questions, discussion. Obviously, I've seen a few questions posted in the chat. I don't know if presenters have answered those privately. Some of them I think got answered after the question was asked. But if you have a question, just feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question. Likewise, you can post it in the chat if you'd prefer, and I'll read it out. Or if you have a program and you want to add something to this that folks might not know about, or there's, an additional component or a different type of program, go ahead. So unless we have an overwhelming number of people who try to talk all at once, I'd say just unmute yourself and talk and self-moderate.
Abe, can I ask a question of a number of folks who have spoken and maybe others who are dealing with the same thing? I'm in Westport, and we have a large transfer station, but we have it's only in one location for recycling and now food scrap contributions and drop off. We have because we're a big geography, we have another side of town where we have yard waste that can be dropped. So that's that type of, the carbon. But people from our far outside, away from downtown, really complain about having to come to this one location. And I think the issue is how do these other towns envision staffing multiple drop-off sites? Because otherwise they're self-regulated. I don't think our town is prepared to do that yet.
So Greenwich, for example, have another drop-off location, and we're using farmers market. And this is just once a week and during the farmers market hours. Also, our local Audubon, which is located backcountry, is interested in doing their own composting, and they want to build their own composting system. And they could be another place for the drop-off.
Okay, great.
In Stamford, we have the same issue. That's our, we're trying to get a second machine and give it to the Museum and Nature Center or the Arboretum up in North Stamford. But what we've seen at other municipalities is that they have drop-off sites in toters like we've seen today, that some of the municipalities that I've been to have them unstaffed, and open to the public, even 24/7. So.
Okay, well, we got a lobby for that, I guess.
But that's a gamble, you got to trust the converted.
And I work in New York City. I used to work for the New York City Compost Project. I now work at Atlas Organics, but in New York City, there's a ton of drop-offs, and there are staffed ones and unstaffed ones. And obviously with the staffed ones, you have a lot more education, but if you find the right partner for an unstaffed one, and if it's in a location where someone isn't going to mistake it for a trash can, it can be very successful.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
I have a question for Domingo. I wonder whether or not, what would it take to convert the composters which we have at school into your system, because it looks like it's self-sustainable and also it's not expensive. How you build those boxes or containers for your system?
Okay, well, I use another material. I used to work with wood. Now I work with recycled lumber, HDPE, because they last much more. And the difference between mine and yours is that there's no opening on the sides, because given that I'm pushing air from behind, the air cannot escape. It only can go up. And that through low bulk density material can actually permeate through the material and aerate the whole system. So you need to be able to have closed sides for this. And then it's very simple to open holes from behind and put PVC pipes, between the floor behind the bins. And, it's a very simple system, but that allows you to not have, turning this every 2 days or every week. You basically, just need to wait for the 30 days to take this system down, this material out. The another thing that it's key is that all these bins have lids, because you need to control for snow, and you need to control for high precipitation. Otherwise, you're going to flood your system in the way I have set it up. So it's pretty simple. It's just a different model of doing things.
One thing that I'll add in here just very quickly, which pertains to our funding, unlike some programs where the funding is limited to purely the cost of materials, right? It's just the equipment that you need to implement it. The match fund is broader than that. So this includes if you need to hire contractors or consultants to come out and actually help you implement the program. So like in this case, let's say that you wanted to implement Domingo's model, who better to help you implement it than Domingo? The costs of people's time and labor, right? Those are real costs and they're necessary. So the match fund can also cover those things. So as you're looking at that as a potential source, it's not just the materials, It's everything that it takes for you to implement one of these programs.
Yeah.
So,
One thing that I want to mention very quickly is that one of the reasons I use this method is because I try to adhere to what's called the process to further reduce pathogens. You know, when we work with food waste, we have the potential of dealing with pathogens like E. coli and Salmonella. And, you know, we have also issue with the weeds that we put into the system. So I need to heat up the system through the biological process to keep it up above 130 degrees for at least 3 days to guarantee or at least try to secure that those pathogens are being killed or being reduced. Given that I'm giving my compost to growing food, you know, and I need to make sure that that's going to happen. Sometimes in systems that are not that are not like the one that I'm managing, they have a hard time on keeping up with standards. And here is, you want a compost that is stable and that it's healthy for your soil, for your plants, and for humans. And that's part of you know, your responsibility as a composter.
Hey, Domingo, can you put your telephone number or email address into the chat box?
Yes, we'll do right away. I'll be glad to.
If you scroll up, I also sent the link to Peels and Wheels Composting before. So email and phone number are better, but the link is there too, where I'm sure you can find that info.
And you're willing, you know, and you can, I invite you to come to New Haven. We process every Monday from 12 at noon to 3 o'clock in the afternoon at 15 James Street. And you can come and see the whole thing.
Thanks, Domingo. So one other thing, I think we have, this pertains to the question from before about how you set up other sites for drop off. Yeah, so Lynn, thanks for getting to this. Actually, we were thinking about this at the exact same time. So I don't want to go too much into this because I don't want to misspeak and, you know, say something's possible that isn't. But if we've got someone from deep here, my understanding anyways is that there's now a very quick and easy permitting process for satellite locations for these types of programs, where you can easily set up other drop-offs, because this is always going to be the challenge if you're doing a food scraps program, is how do you make it accessible and easy for people, right? Like, folks want to do the right thing, but they also don't want to drive 30 minutes away to do the right thing. So if you can set up locations that are in various community spots where folks are already going, that I think that's a great way, right? Schools, if a school can serve as a drop-off location, people are already going there, kids are going, folks are picking up their kids, community centers, YMCA, Boys and Girls Clubs, things like that. So if there's anyone from deep here that could just speak briefly to what that satellite location process looks like, I think that'd be super helpful.
Hi, Abe. Yeah, I can jump in here quickly. Name's Abigail Eller. I work for the Solid Waste Permitting Program at Connecticut Deep. I'm going to put a link in the chat that'll probably be useful to navigate off Zoom too, but it really goes over our current food waste permitting options and into detail on how to implement any of them. So if you do have a satellite location that's associated with your town's transfer station, we do have methods now to easily implement food scrap collection programs at those locations. And this table really details exactly the steps that you need to do, and also provides contact information for the 2 permitting supervisors. And I can put their emails in the chat as well for you to reach out to. And so that way we can help you, you know, get projects started or help your town have it easier on anybody.
Awesome, thank you. So Jenny, it looks like you answered this, but I'm just going to read the question out because I imagine others are probably wondering about this too. So someone was wondering if Dan and Jenny, you guys could address the source of power for the machine, whether it's electricity, fuel, or, and I think this is a key one, could it be solarized? So do you guys want to speak to that a little bit?
I do not know if it can be solarized or not. It looks like Dan's in the middle of doing some work. As far as I know, I don't think it can. It requires quite a bit of electricity to run it because it's a big auger, it's a big motor. So Dan, are you there? Yeah. So Dan, I don't know that
right.
there's, Yeah, so I think solar would require a lot of panels.
Specifically for the machine, our recycling center is powered by solar. So I believe our power supply comes from solar power anyway.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add, I mean, people did amazing presentations. If anybody wants, to talk, because we all have limited time, and it seems like everybody thematically has all different types of outreach and education that they've been doing. But feel free to look at our website. We have a lot of good information on there. We produced videos for our citizens, and we're happy to talk to anybody about how we implemented our rollout. But the themes are all the same. They're all just variations. But all of these are successful programs. So feel free to reach out for us. We'd be happy to share information.
Hello. I have a question for Dan, actually, and how his machine handles non-compostable contaminants, such as plastic bags or food packaging, and just really any item that shouldn't go in there.
What we found was that, again, I always use the term preaching to the converted. People were pretty good about it, but there is contaminants. And when it processes through the augers for 24 hours, whatever is a contaminant still comes out in the compost. So, we tried to see, there was another municipality that Echo Rich was involved with, said they wanted to run compostable wooden flatware. So they bought a little supply of them and they brought them over to our machine and they ran it through our machine 24 hours. Well, it really wasn't compostable in our machine. So therefore, at the end of the process, they came out in quantity at it. What we did find was our small machine, 100-pound machine, wasn't strong enough to really compost paper items, paper plates, things like that. And because people also threw it out in volume, put it in the machine in volume. I think if you put one paper plate, two paper plates in, it would process, but in the volume that it came into our machine, it wasn't processing it. So I'm looking forward to, within the next week, seeing our 500-pound machine, which is a stronger motor, a stronger cutting source in there, to see if that stuff processes better than it did on the smaller machine. I'll give you feedback after we see if it's successful or not.
All right, Dan and Jenny, you guys are popular with the next couple of questions here. So another question for you guys. If you set up additional machines in other areas of town, so like North Stamford, where folks are currently having to drive far, what's the process going to look like for residents? Will they be feeding the machine themselves, or are you going to have it at a dedicated facility?
Yeah, okay. So I think, we're trying to get a staffed facility like the museum or the Arboretum that has people there, would do, in essence, the same thing, where people can bring their items during the day. And at the end of the day, I want that location staff to be able to fill the machine up. Somebody also asked if we were accepting commercial food waste. And right now the answer is no, we're not. Our recycling center is residential only. I think ultimately the weight of commercial would be so large that we'd need a separate facility entirely. We don't accept commercial waste at our recycling center right now, so I wouldn't open it up to commercial at all.
Yeah, I responded to the very nice person that had a question about the commercial composting. And for commercial entities, I think really the solution for that is for corporations to invest in hiring companies like Curbside Compost to come and pick up. That is the most practical solution, because also just transferring that amount of materials to a center, it's just very unwieldy. And I think this is a great way that companies could prove and expand on their sustainability projects, and it would be so easy for them to do. So I suggested that the person that works at Charter Communications talk to them about potentially hiring Curbside Compost to come pick up. And I'm imagining with the amount of compost that an entire building cafeteria would create, Curbside compost would be more than happy to service them, and I am guessing would probably give them a pretty good deal because you're getting a lot of material at one pickup point. So that was my thought about it.
Awesome. Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, I mean, that's one thing to this, right? In a town or community that has one solution, it doesn't mean that it's the only solution, right? These things can and should probably all be multiple, that you can have a machine that's processing. You can also do in-community composting like Domingo's talked about. You can have a food waste hauling program, and you can have your schools composting. So there's no reason that it needs to be just do one of these and then cut it there, or only do that type of program as you expand. They can, these all work together, and they're all different models with different benefits. Another question that came through was if anyone, any of the speakers could speak to documented cost savings. Alex, this is relevant to you, particularly since they asked about, especially at the school level. So, I mean, we all know that tipping fees are increasing, and at some point it's very likely that the economics will simply make sense to compost your food scraps because you're reducing waste and you're reducing your tipping fees. But so have any of you guys looked at that and either documented right now if there are cost savings, or, look to the future and thought through what you anticipate those as being?
In Greenwich, unfortunately, the schools do not pay for the trash, and this is a huge obstacle to us. And we were hoping that Greenwich adopts pay-as-you-throw, and if they would, then we'll solve the problems, and they will actually beg for composters, and they will do composting without our push. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. So the tipping fee doesn't really work for the public properties. So it's not an incentive.
Yeah. Listen, my comment about this is that can be easily estimated. You can look at your own data of how much you are sending to your municipal, incinerator in terms of, how much you're paying in tipping fees. Normally it's calculated by the ton. So wherever these programs are subtracting in terms of poundage, of tonnage, that's your savings. Of course, you still have other costs of transportation. You have other costs of, labor for that collection. But, right now, for instance, in New Haven, the tipping fee has gone up to $95 per ton. Now, if you go and send all this material to an aerobic digester, I think the tipping fee up in Southington is $45 a ton. So there's a huge savings in terms of that you can invest in, collecting your food waste, whether it be through a transfer station, through a system like I'm doing, in terms of, having opportunities for small business or for small non-for-profit to collect and then centralize and send away. Something that I don't see much here, business like mine, they're like 150 nationwide. Okay, in Los Angeles, in Boston, in New York City, in Florida, Chicago, where there are people willing to pay for the collection house to house. Many of us do it with bikes, others do it with small trucks. But also the idea is, how can we generate an economy around compost, which we all need? And there's a percentage of the population that might be willing to pay for, whether it be attending the drop-off sites, whether it be for collection, and create a synergy that will bring us more resilient as a community. Right now, we're depending on somebody else doing composting. We depend on very few people actually doing the collection of food scraps. So we also need to ask our neighbors and our citizens that we have to be responsible also somehow in the cost of managing our own waste. And by helping out and pitching in and supporting and funding or paying for services, this can just give us much more strength to be able to absorb and deal with our waste in the long term. So we need to explore, as Abe said, diversify the opportunities that we have, and of course depends not only the funding but the leadership and the willingness to do the work that for so long we have devolved just for municipalities, but we can do it also at the community level.
In Stamford, like Domingo said, using cost estimates, we're going to save from the maximization of 500 pounds a day. We're looking at maybe $6,000 to $7,000 a year, keeping it out of garbage. If we were to haul it away as compost to the certified compost facilities, you could double that to about $15,000. I was involved in some questionnaires to the DP recently, and my suggestion to them was to incentivize a local group to create a certified compost facility close to our location here in Fairfield County. That would eliminate a lot of the hauling costs, which is most of the costs you get. You know, for us, I think the closest facility is in New Milford, Connecticut. So the hauling cost to get it up there in tip fee is close to $130, $140 a ton if you calculate it that way, and which is much higher than my garbage costs. So if there was a location within Fairfield County, it would benefit quite a few people on this phone call.
Abe? Yep.
Yeah.
May I ask this broad audience represented here this morning, are there any communities that are doing pay as you throw on this
Lynn,
call?
Yeah, anyone feel free to answer. I don't know the answer to this. So Lynn, if you do, go ahead, or anybody else.
I don't know of any programs that are pay as you throw. And I have a feeling they wouldn't be very well received, I'm guessing. Because no matter what, people have to make extra effort to do this. And I don't know, I'm talking for Stamford, which is a very mixed community, but I don't think it would ever work, especially in Stamford.
I'll just jump in. There are a couple towns doing pay as you throw successfully for decades.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Yeah, it's a hard push, but Mansfield, Connecticut, Ginny Walton, the recycling coordinator there, if anyone wants to reach out to her, we can provide information. Stonington, yes, as mentioned in the chat, John Petty Place, doing great stuff. Not positive of the others. It is one of the actions in the Sustainable CT roadmap, and there's a lot of support from DEEP and others to help your town navigate that. So we'd love to see more. And yeah, I can find more examples if people would like, or the contact information, just let us know.
And also it works really, really well in Massachusetts. There are so many towns involved. I'm not sure why it doesn't want to take off in Connecticut.
Listen, one quick, responding to the former question about savings, I'm just calculating of how my small operation in New Haven, I basically saving the city $7,550 per year, and I'm a very small operation. Imagine that you can replicate this in 2, 3, or 4 parts of the town in your neighborhood. It can be a sizable thing. Is a matter of again having the leadership and the funding and the energy to do so at different levels.
Domingo, so just staying with you for a second, I know that for the presentation, I asked you to speak really practically about the composting system itself, right? What your base system is, how it works. But I do think that the model that you have, right, it's totally different than some of these other ones because it's a social enterprise, right? It's actually a business that's self-sustaining. And like we talked about, we have funding through Sustainable CT, but we won't fund a program every single year. So after we fund the pilot, folks have to find another way to keep that going. So could you talk a little bit more about one, what residents pay to participate in your program? I know the answer, but I don't want to guess. And then sort of what the operation looks like, what your costs are to run it, and if it's all bike pickup, if some of it's truck trailer pickup.
So listen, as I mentioned, one of the things that we have here in New Haven and many towns is that we burn all our trash. We have a lot of contaminated soil with lead and arsenic. And then, we want to grow food. And that's why everybody's doing raised beds and buying soil from elsewhere and buying compost from elsewhere. So when we started all this, can we change the script? Can we do something about this and produce our own compost? And of course, it's all started with New Haven Farms and the link to an urban farm that was producing food for people with diabetes and the pre-diabetes condition. and there was a need to build soil. So many of these farms are growing food on top of asphalt, and they needed to build soils which were not natural soils. So the way we started first as a non-for-profit and the umbrella of Canadian Farms, and it was a program where people that were pitching into the program, just paid a small fee for us to pick up on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, or even as a drop-off. And then we process ourselves. We didn't just haul it to bring it to somebody else. We actually do the whole process ourselves. So right now, and since the beginning, people pay $30 a month. So that's around like $7.50 per week per pickup. So the $7.50, $3 goes to the biker, which is outside on the road, exposed to the elements, to the heat, to the sun, to the winter, to the cold, to the rain, and exposed to the traffic. So 45, a lot of goes to the biker, and then $4.50 goes for processing. And that means for the personnel that is actually doing the recipe, who's doing the preparation of the beds, which are monitoring the bins, which are sifting, which are distributing. And so far, it has been a very stable business. We have around 7 workers right now, including myself. And of course, it's an issue of scaling. It gets to a point, how can you grow within a city where there's no land for it? Of course there's land, but it's the disposition of the city to allocate land for composting is not there. I always say that there are 2 different views. One is the waste management aspect of collecting food waste. Another one is the aspect of composting it. And sometimes municipalities want to just get rid of it and get away with it and burn it or send it to an aerobic digester. And others are thinking, no, that's a resource. That's a resource that we can capitalize on, that we can recircle, and that can improve the soil of our place and create the condition for good growing food, for our park, for our trees. So depending on your visualization of how to manage it, then you have a lot of potential benefits. And like creating jobs, which I think is very, very key. New Haven is an underfunded city that needs to create jobs, and we need to create the opportunity in this green economy that I think we need to push forward. So I don't know if I responded completely to your question, but it can be done, and there's niches. 98% of people that compost with me that are willing to pay for a service are women. These are young women, professional women that are doctors, that are lawyers, women that come from California, from New York City to, from Oregon to San Francisco, people that have composted before and just want to continue composting because that's a way of life for them. And they don't imagine themselves going back to a situation where they're putting in plastic and throwing it away. So we need to build that new generation of people that are willing to support it because they feel responsible. This is the way that we have to engage. We have to become responsible for our waste, and therefore, how do we get involved? And I think the examples that we're seeing today is a range of examples of how we can do it. And I just only see good things.
Thanks,
Domingo. This is, hi, Lynn Stoddard with Sustainable CT. I just wanted to jump in. This is an awesome conversation. And as always, we look to you guys in the towns to share best practices and help coach others. It's amazing. I wanted to do a really quick shout out and thank you to Abe. As some of you have heard, he's, after 2 years, he's leaving us on Friday for other adventures. And we hired him about 2 years ago. He helped finalize the design of the Community Match Fund program and executed it, and the success and the support that you have all seen over the past 2 years. He's been phenomenal. Yeah, an honor and a treat to work with, as you guys have all said. I just wanted to take a little moment to thank him and share that with all of you. I'm sure you all have great stories about Abe's support. We are in the middle of hiring someone to continue running the match fund program and got a lot of great candidates, 136 actually. So we have a lot of homework. No one will be able to fulfill Abe's shoes, of course, but we will continue the program. It might be a little slow in the meantime, but I'll be here to support you all, and you can reach us at funding@sustainablecT.org. We'll have Abe continue a little bit part-time with the transition, but anyway, the main point is thank you, Abe. You've been amazing and awesome, and just made an amazing success of this program.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks, everyone. I say this all the time, but one, this has been a great job, and two, I have an incredibly easy job in that it's the easiest sales job you could ever imagine, right? We have dollars that are super accessible that we're just throwing out there saying, hey, you want to do something great? I'm literally selling money to people. So it's been a great job. It's been a great program. A couple of weeks ago, I think we surpassed 2 million in investment through the community match fund. So like over 180 projects in I think right around 70 municipalities throughout Connecticut. So just like great uptick. Thank you to all of you guys, right? You're the folks who have led these projects, done this work. So it's always a little bit funny when folks are thanking me, and I'm just here sort of getting out of the way to let you guys do the great work that you want to do in your communities. So thanks for the pleasure of having worked with all of you over the last couple of years. But anyway,
Thanks, Abe, for your help.
Yeah, of course. With that out of the way, if there are other questions or other things that you guys want to talk about, I know that we're scheduled, we're 5 minutes over right now, but I'm open. I'm happy to keep the Zoom sort of running for as long as you guys still have questions or still want to talk about things. And the long and awkward silence there probably means that we've been so thorough that we've answered every question you guys have, and you're all sending emails to your elected officials and the commissions that you're on and saying, hey, let's go do this program. Dawn, go ahead.
Real quickly, this was recorded, I understand.
Yes. So what I said before is it'll be posted to, I think
Okay.
actually we can send it out to all of the attendees if you guys want it, but it'll also be posted on the webinar section of our website.
Okay, great. I'm sorry I missed that. Thank you.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, so barring any other questions, I mean, if stuff comes up, so like Lynn said, I'm still gonna be working a few hours a week. So emails to me will still be responded to. They'll be forwarded to Lynn, but funding@sustainablecT.org is probably the best one to reach out to now. So as you guys get to work and think about the programs that you want to implement, send us an email. If you can dig up Lynn's phone number, give her a call, and we're excited to work with you guys to help get these programs off the ground. Thanks so much for attending.
I put my phone number in the chat. Feel free.
You did? Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
And thank you to our speakers, guys. The presentations were
Yes.
fantastic and inspiring. So thank you so much.
Abe, just to send out see some people interested in coming to Stamford to come to the recycling center. We're open 7 to 2 Tuesday through Saturday. Feel free to come by. You can call my cell phone 203-223-8497, or just come and tell my staff you want me to come over and talk with you. 7 to 2 Tuesday through Saturday, anytime.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks.
All right, folks, it has been a pleasure. I'm going to end the meeting, but we'll email out the recording to all of you. So feel free to share it with anybody else, or if there are things you want to revisit, you'll have access to that. All right, thanks again. Bye.